Paris Perspective.
Hello and welcome to this edition of Paris Perspective with me, David Coffey. In December of 1997, the first international agreement of its kind, the Kyoto Protocol, was launched. And that was a deal that would stabilise greenhouse gas concentrations in the climate to prevent dangerous anthropogenic interference with the climate system. Flash floods, rising sea levels, record droughts and extreme weather would all be consigned to the annals of history. 25 years later, has the climate doomsday clock been reversed? Have the COP summits offset the climate apocalypse, despite the succession of promises from G7 nations to mitigate the consequences of the Earth's temperature rising over 1.5 degrees Celsius? Today, I'm joined in studio by Stephan Savarese, who's the CEO of Technocarbon, which is a company that produces low-carbon building materials to replace steel and concrete, and that's based here in Paris. Stephan, it's great to have you on the programme today.
Thanks, David. Very nice being invited here.
Well, the hook for our meeting today is the anniversary of what was the first ever legally binding agreement of its kind a quarter of a century ago in Japan. But also we're going to look at the results of the recently concluded climate summit in Sharm el-Sheikh in Egypt, the COP27 meeting that took place in Egypt. At that meeting, UN Secretary General Antonio Guterres called for an end to what he called a toxic cover-up by companies who claim to be carbon net zero if they invest in new fossil fuels, cause deforestation, or offset emissions instead of reducing them. Now, he condemned what he called bogus net zero pledges that cover up massive fossil fuel expansion, and that is responsible for a toxic cover-up that he said that could push our world over the climate cliff. This is also known to you and I as greenwashing, and part of the greater scheme of greenwashing. Now, where do we actually stand after COP27? You yourself were at the COP26 that took place in Glasgow last year. What has moved on since Sharm el-Sheikh meeting last month?
Well, since COP21, we have had a very great show of goodwill. Everybody wants to help building a new climate transition where we would actually curb down emissions and then switch to net zero, which is the target for 2040 if you want to go to plus 1.5 degrees, and latest 2050, 2055 for plus 2.0. And then beyond plus 2.0, we are in the no-go zone, in the red climate zone, where we don't know what would happen, but probably catastrophic climate change. So if we want to move away from that fear of catastrophic climate change, we need to give people hope and we need to start defining the solutions. Mm-hmm. So the first target is, have we reduced greenhouse gas emissions? And the answer is probably yes and probably no. We will have a few years coming from now where the emissions will go up and down because we have the goodwill, but we haven't got our act together. Mm-hmm. And this is the big focus of the next few years, which is how do we get our act together on climate change? And
that brings me actually to a point that Mary Robinson, the former Irish president, who is also the head of the elders group of states, men, women, statespeople, you could say, she was very vocal in saying that we have to change the message on climate change, that if we keep on pushing for catastrophe, for disaster, for cataclysmic events, people are just going to throw their hands in the air and not make the effort. They're saying, look, we're already done for. How do you think that message can be changed? And is it because, I mean, let's just say you're one individual small player among a whole field of players. Can you all get on message on the same time with the same focus?
The field has been very divided. Some people were saying, it's too late for plus 1.5, which is really the bad message about climate change. It's not true. We have a choice, and the choice is don't choose extinction.
That would be stupid.
Okay. If you say, it's not possible and we just give up, then we choose extinction. And that's not the clever choice. So the clever choice is, yes, we can do it, but the challenge is huge. So how do we get our act together? And the solutions must be simple. easy to understand, and very efficient. And efficient in the short term and in the long term at the same time.
Now, bringing up the point of greenwashing, for example, what mechanisms are in place to evaluate whether companies are actually tangibly cutting emissions? Are there transparency mechanisms, for example, that are actually working, that we can actually get the data from?
Well, we've got new data from an organization named Climate Trace, which is a coalition of organizations. And a company named What Time has done a tremendous job of proving that, first, our estimates on greenhouse gas emissions are too optimistic. There are 200 countries, and all the countries have underestimated their emissions for years. So the message, which is, we may have curbed down emissions. In fact, no, we haven't, because we just discovered, and that comes from satellite measurements, a new satellite system has been used to measure the actual emissions. And the actual emissions in every country are larger than what all the countries have declared. So, and there is a global stock take that is to be made, and the analysis shows that the stock take is not accurate. So we first get our act together on measurement, and then on measures. So measurements are now available and pretty accurate, and they show that the results are not good. So the next big COP will be COP 31st, COP 31, sorry. Yeah. And since COP 26, what has happened is that everybody has agreed that the target is plus 1.5. This means that we must switch to net zero before 2040. Not 2050. So this means that we even have a bigger challenge than what everybody thought to tackle. And the solution is very simple. You must stop coal earlier than what had been anticipated. You must put a fair price on carbon, and you must decide that tree planting, forest protection, and switching to non-fossil fuels is a priority. And this hasn't been done.
Yes. I mean, indeed, there have been concerns that some firms haven't exactly aligned their efforts with climate science. I mean, they're failing to account for emissions from key activities that they do. And, or they say that they're making up for, pollution today with carbon credits and activities like tree planting. But what's the point of planting trees if you're the one who's ripping them out of the ground? So am I right in saying essentially that multinationals, as they stand, or let's just say multinationals that are involved in deforestation, who are really the big perpetrators of greenwashing, that they're essentially running to stand still when it comes to carbon neutrality? They're not making any progress.
Yes, both corporations and government are not making progress. When the G20 is arguing that TCFD, those new rules about climate accounting can change the situation, it's not true. The only thing that can really change the way business is done is putting a price on carbon.
Yes.
And it's not because they have to do some climate change reporting that is going to change their strategy and the way the accounting is done.
Yes, climate accounting. I like that. That's a very good. That will stay in my head. Now we're also talking today, as we the hook for our meeting is the 25th anniversary of the Kyoto Protocol on Sunday. Now moving on from that really laid the foundations for the 2015 Paris Agreement, which did lay bare the ambitious aim of limiting global warming, as we said, to 1.5 degrees Celsius. But the Paris Agreement, it hasn't really gathered the traction that everyone expected back then. We see the images of all of the world leaders. It was almost like Neville Chamberlain coming off the plane from Berlin. They were all very happy with themselves. With peace in our time, the world would be saved. What do countries need to do to actually get the Paris Agreement adhered to?
There have been two remarkable achievements since COP21. At COP26, the fact that everybody agreed that the objectives was plus 1.5 degrees Celsius, which was kind of fuzzy in the conclusions of the Paris Agreement, because at that time, many countries did not agree with that. Yeah. So the agreement has been reached in Glasgow last year. At COP27, we have the loss and damage agreement, which is yet to be implemented and so on, but it is at least a global agreement that something should be done about it, and to help
And the loss and damage agreement, of course, this is about helping countries that are directly affected by climate change. Let's say in Polynesia, for example, where you have these small countries with rising sea levels who are going to be wiped off the map if nothing is done. Am I right in saying that the fund that they're looking to put in place is 100 billion? Is that the figure?
It should be 100 billion per year.
Per year.
But it's, and that's just a fraction of the global effort to achieve the climate transition, which is estimated to over 1,200 billion per year.
Yes.
So we haven't even done that. So of course the acts are far behind the declarations, but at least we have the declarations that everybody agrees.
But people have to pony up. There was a great.
It's still only goodwill.
Yeah, it's still only goodwill. Well, there was a very good quote there from a member of the UN. I think it was the chief of the UN panel on climate change, who said, you don't get an A for just showing up to class. You get an A for doing the work, and you can't pay someone else to do it. You have to do it yourself. So, I mean, that really sums it up very nicely. Now, again, like, it's very hard to look into the crystal ball here, but there's a company, a non-profit organization called the CDP worldwide that runs a worldwide disclosure system for companies to manage their environmental impacts, and that they found that decarbonisation plans for major companies or major corporations from G7 nations are putting the Earth on a collision course to heat potentially to a catastrophic 2.7 degrees Celsius. I mean, what exactly does that mean? When was the last time the Earth was 2.7 degrees hotter than it is today? And what climate conditions are we looking at? Because we have to almost look at paleontology and, or paleoclimatology to actually get an idea in our head what the world would look like.
That was several million years ago.
Yeah.
So it's hard for us to imagine living in the world like that. It's probably possible to live in a world like that. But the problem is the transition. Cities and civilizations are going to be destroyed. That's what we don't want to lose. We don't want to lose that because telling humankind, okay, we just destroy everything and we start afresh. Well, some people are tempted by this solution, but I think it's not a majority. So what can be done instead is to change what we have, which is not entirely bad or entirely good. We are in the gray zone right now. And the question is, do you want to go to the red zone or the green zone?
Yes.
Everybody wants to go to the green zone. So how do we do it?
Yes.
Well, it's very simple. We need to move away from complex solutions like the exchange trading system. When has an exchange trading system allowed to reduce CO2 emissions? It did not happen. Over the past 20 years. We've seen failures of ETS. Putting a price of carbon, this is what G20 has been trying to avoid by inventing new complex regulations that do not allow really accounting for CO2 and for greenhouse gases. But this is what we need. We need measurements and measures to reduce greenhouse gas emissions. How do we do this? We need solutions. We don't need 1,000 solutions. We don't need 100 solutions. We need a few solutions. We need to replace coal with other types of energy. We need to reduce oil and gas, and we need to change the way we are making materials, and we need to protect forests and plant trees.
Sure. Indeed, that brings me to a point about recently the European Union has basically greenwashed natural gas as being this is a transition fuel. Are they being hypocritical here by saying that what is essentially a fossil fuel is green and is good for the environment?
It's not hypocrisy, it's marketing genius. Natural gas, come on, it's fossil gas, not natural gas. Everything is natural, right? Uranium
Coal
is
natural, exactly.
Okay? Coal is natural, okay? It is a great gift to humankind. This is what has enabled this radio studio to exist. Yes. So we don't criticize the fact that fossil fuels have been used. We criticize the fact that from the day we knew that this was a mistake, we have to stop it.
Yeah.
And this is what we did not manage to do. We've saying since Kyoto, 25 years ago, oh, this might be a mistake. And then COP21, how many years ago?
7 years ago, yes.
Yes, 7 years ago. Okay, we said we have to stop. Have we stopped? No.
Yeah.
We just managed, but there have been achievements. countries like China or India, who first said, oh, we're going to stop coal in 2070 or 2060, now they agree on 2050. So there is progress.
Yes.
But it's still for tomorrow.
And there is another point, because it's pertinent today. There is this UN, there's a COP15 climate conference that's taking place in Canada at the moment that's about biodiversity. It's a biodiversity climate that is taking place there. That indeed runs in tandem with saving the planet. I mean, they're saying that if we continue on this course that doesn't move, 1 million species are going to be wiped off the earth in the next 50 years. How do you reconcile, let's just say, the importance of messaging climate change and also the maintenance of biodiversity? They two seem to have kind of been grown apart, but they are both very much on the same page.
I call that the asymmetry of risk. If you don't solve climate change, everything you're doing on biodiversity will be destroyed by climate change. And if you address climate change, you're making it easier to address biodiversity, because to reduce climate change, we need to plant forests. So that helps biodiversity, restoring the habitat, protecting the existing habitats. This means we need to be clear on the priorities. The priority of this decade is to curb down emissions. But next decade is about net zero. Net zero in 2040. It's not carbon neutrality in 2050 anymore. We know that. Yes. Climate Trace has shown that we are moving too slowly and that we have been too optimistic on the carbon budget.
Absolutely. Now, Stephan, just to wrap up our conversation today, it was also remarked by, during the COP in Sharm el-Sheikh, that indeed small actions by groups such as Technocarbon, yourself, working in unison, could even have a greater impact on mitigating climate change sector by sector, rather than these big agreements such as the 2015 Paris Agreement. Now, does every gesture, and this is also, as you say, about marketing here, does every gesture towards reducing our carbon footprint make any impact on the global scheme of things?
Yes, we need both.
From home to work to
it's not the same
building
people.
materials.
It's not the same people. We are millions of people working on this now, and this is the first achievement, which is mobilizing millions of people in the climate transition. But now everyone at their level have their way of acting on that, and one person does not need to do everything. But all the people need to do everything.
Yes, everybody has to pull their weight and do their bit.
So do what you can at your level. That's the first message. Okay,
Stephan Savarese, CEO of Technocarbon, thank you very much for joining me on Paris Perspective today.
Thank you, David.
And thank you for joining us. And remember, you can get all of our back catalogue of Paris Perspective on RFI English/podcasts, or indeed wherever you get your podcasts. Have a great day, and we'll be back in the new year.